Initially, the president of Mexico, Sisi, did not want to open up the gate to allow humanitarian material to get in. My memory is fine. Take a look at what I've done since I've become president. None of you thought I could pass any of the things I got passed. How'd that happen? I guess I just forgot what was going on. I'm well-meaning, and I'm an elderly man, and I know what the hell I'm doing. I've been president. I put this country back on its feet. I don't need his recommendation.
Well, that was U.S. President Joe Biden in a surprise news conference yesterday defending his memory. It comes in the wake of a special counsel report which offered a harsh assessment of his mental agility. It described him as, quote, an elderly man with a poor memory. But as you heard in that clip, at the same press conference, Biden mixed up the names of the president of Egypt and Mexico. In an interview set to air this Sunday on Question Period, CTV's chief political correspondent Vassy Kapelos asked former U.S. ambassador to Canada, Bruce Heyman, about how damaging the special counsel's assessment of Biden's mental acuity could be.
What the Republicans do, and they're very effective with it, is try to change your perspective as to what you think of the opposition. Look what they did to Hillary Clinton. Do you remember in 2016 how they talked about her mental competency? Does she have a problem? Is she sick? And they really drove that home. Now, it's been 8 years since then, and clearly that wasn't the truth. This is a good and honest man. And I personally, in my interactions with him, have not seen anything that would cause the concern that was written in this document.
All right, let's bring back the front bench panel. Sabrina Grover, Melanie Paradis, Guratan Singh, and Rachel Aiello. Sabrina, let's start with you. Ambassador Heyman says he's fine, but his opinion might not matter to voters. What do you think?
I think let's start with the idea of why did Joe Biden and his team have this press conference? I think that's a really critical question to be asking, right? I mean, if I was advising a political team, I certainly wouldn't put him out just, I think there was 23 minutes notice given to get this press conference underway. And I think that just doesn't make any political sense. I think for Joe Biden, it's less about his actual mental health and whether or not that's deteriorating or not, and more about the perception of voters. He really needs to bring young voters back to that coalition and make sure that they are in that coalition to make sure he can win. And beyond the things with like Israel, Gaza, the student loan issue, some other issues on social problems, the idea of Sleepy Joe is just not winning back voters. And so I think for the Democrats, they have to think about who they're going to actually use as their spokesperson heading into November. And maybe Joe Biden is the candidate, but maybe he's not the person that's taking all these press conferences.
Yeah, Melanie, I wanted to pick up on that. You were the lead press person for a candidate, for a leader. When you call a late night evening press conference to try and refute results, what does that tell you from a political calculation point of view?
That the team has lost control of their candidate. So this kind of a decision would only have been made by the candidate, in this case, the president. I don't think that any team would have advised him to do this. It was a terrible idea. Instead, what they should have done was send all their spinners out, send the former ambassador out to give interviews like the one that he did with Vassy, but do that on American networks and reinforce like that he absolutely is copus mentis, everything's fine. You want to hear that from third parties, and then set something up in the morning when he's fresh the next day, where he can look really strong and really smart and sharp. And that's how you execute this properly. But sometimes you've got a candidate or a leader who just says, no, I know what I want to do. I'm going to go and do this right now. And you kind of have to roll with it. And so I feel for the political staff behind the scenes who I'm sure were cringing and then deep in their scotch cups later on.
Yeah, face-palming would have been a bit of an understatement. Guratan, a poll for NBC News this week showed 3/4 of voters, including half of Democrats, say that they have concerns about President Joe Biden's mental and physical health. Not good news just 8 months from an election.
Not good news at all, especially given the alternative. We're talking about the potential return of someone who is incredibly damaging, not just to America, but the entire world. The vile hatred, rhetoric, conspiracy theories, the the accusations of catering towards fascism. The list goes on when we criticize Donald Trump and the real danger he poses to marginalized communities and just people as a whole with the potential Trump presidency. And I think it's important that we keep that in mind when we evaluate Joe Biden. We understand that under his presidency, what have we seen? We've seen free lunch programs. We've seen the investment into clean energy. We've seen debt forgiveness for students. We've seen union membership grow for the first time in decades under Joe Biden. So I think it's really important that we look at the context in which this conversation is happening. Should we have a younger presidential candidate? Potentially, maybe, but it's the one that America has. And I think given the alternative, it's the best chance America has.
Yeah, and to add to what Grattan said, I mean, on this side of the border, you have Prime Minister Trudeau and President Biden who are politically aligned. Do you think that there's concern in the halls of power on our side of the border?
Well, I mean, I think to a certain degree, I wouldn't expect to see the Prime Minister inviting Biden here anytime soon or rushing over to D.C. to stand next to him. But our Prime Minister has his own fish to fry of a different variety. So I'm sure he's going to try to remain, and even if he is questioned on this, Justin Trudeau, focused on the issues here. And while he will do the diplomatic thing of saying, we'll let America figure this out, I don't know there's going to be too much of a contrast or comparison just because they're politically aligned. Like others have said, like that's their candidate. It seems they're going ahead with this. So the Prime Minister is more so probably not distancing himself from Biden, but at this current moment, probably not rushing to be there with him at a late night, 23-minute notice press conference. Yeah,
or anything else that late night. Sabrina, pick up a little bit on that, though, what Canada sort of can do in this space, and you sort of spoke about it a little bit as well. I mean, Canada is starting that offensive on the other side of the border right now, trying to make sure that the charm offensive is happening. And so I guess, do they just go after everybody else except for President Biden right now?
Well, I think there's really two things that the government needs to do in order to kind of prepare themselves for what might happen in November 2024. And I think, number one, they need to have a strategy for both dealing with Donald Trump and dealing with Joe Biden. I think there's a lot of economic issues still on the table. There was a lot of economic issues that Canada and the U.S. have gotten through over the last couple of years. And I think that they need to be able to say that they're going to be ready to respond on day one of whatever administration comes in. And if it's a continuation of the Joe Biden administration, that's great. But if it's Donald Trump, then we're going to have to probably deal with some interesting issues around trade and the border. And I think that it would be best for the Liberals to be ready for that. I think you're going to continue to see, though, you're going to continue to see the link between Donald Trump and Pierre Poilievre. I think that they're clear at making it themselves, but I don't think the Liberals will let up on that comparison in the next couple of months.
Okay, I've only got about 2 minutes to go. Melanie, pick up on what Sabrina said and what the Trudeau government has to do.
So I think the Trudeau government will absolutely keep, playing this up and trying to draw comparisons with Trump. I don't think that it will work because this is we talked earlier about the boy who cried wolf. This is, they've cast Aaron O'Toole as Trump. They've cast Andrew Scheer as Trump. They've done this many times, and I don't know that Canadians are buying it. I'd also like to note that Nikki Haley, I think, got it right when she said that the first party to retire their 80-year-old leader is the one that's going to win the U.S. election. And just, to clarify that, Joe Biden doesn't actually have to be the candidate. The Democrats get to nominate their candidate at their convention in August. And in theory, anyway, he could announce that he's not going to run at any point in time between now and then their delegates would pick their candidate on the floor of convention in August.
Grattan, get you 30 seconds on that. Do you think that they're tied to Biden, the Democrats?
Ultimately, it's a decision the Democrats are going to make, but I really want to go back to that point that irrespective of who the Democrats choose, keep in mind the alternative, someone who has incited a riot to overthrow election results, someone who has spread vile rhetoric, racism, and someone who is truly bad for this world. The world cannot afford Trump. America cannot afford Trump, and I'm hopeful that whoever comes forward, we have a strong Democratic leader who makes sure we don't see any more of that terrible human being.
putting Rachel Aiello on the spot for 10 seconds.
Got it. Yeah, we just had Nanos numbers come in, and more Canadians are concerned about relations between our two countries worsening under Trump than Biden. Women were feeling that more acutely. So I think that is kind of where the Prime Minister is going to try to tap into that concern.
Okay, gotta go. Thanks to everybody on the Front Bench panel. That's your Power Play Week in Politics.